Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Binti Azmi with a metric ID of 1191791. Today, my group and I will be presenting and also explaining on the topic of religion and terrorism. Firstly, before we get to know and discover more about these two main topics, let us hear the overview of what religion and terrorism is all about. If we are looking at our world now, we are currently living in a 21st century where supposedly all humans should be living in peace and harmony without any sudden announcement or news on TV or social media about war, bombings, or freely killing people on the other sides of the road that could bring fear or terror to the layman. All people should help each other regardless of their differences on the religion, races, cultures, tribes, and also etc. Living in peace is like the greatest concern of every man. In fact, all religions attach importance to it. There is no such religion that promote only bad things like supporting negativity, terrorism, killing, robbery, and etc. Peace is like the essence of all religion. Religion can never be fulfilled and accomplished if peace is out of discussion. But now, whenever an attack emerges, society be quick to judge that it is a terrorist attack, especially if the attack is big enough, started from a certain group, that they, the people of laymen, quickly assume that, oh, it's a terrorist attack, we're under attack. And when people started to think it was a terrorist attack, they think it has something to do with religion. Why? Does religion really encourage terrorism to happen? Let's take the event of it, September 11, that happened in 2002, when a terrorist Wahhabi group called Al-Qaeda started to attack against the United States of America. The world started to view Muslims as a group of terrorists ever since then. The question is, why is this happening? Probably because they be quick to assume that Wahhabi is related to the religion of Islam, when in reality it has nothing to do with religion at all. It does not reflect to the teaching of Islam. From this research, our team has made a discovery and study about religion versus terrorism. Does it have any correlation to each other? And why do people think that when terrorist attack happen, they will presume it has something to do with religion? Let's unveil this one by one.
What is religion? Religion is a vast, complicated thing. Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Chinese are among most widely practiced faiths in the world. All of these religions stated that salvation is the highest aim of the faithful, and all followers should strive to obtain it. Religion also considered as the way in which people address their life and faith after death with ultimate conscience. These concerns, as expressed in relation to one's own attitudes towards the broader human community or the natural world. Religious life is all about element of religions, moral, conduct, good faith, and participation in religious institutions. From sociology's perspective, religion is an enduring cluster of values, norms, status, function, and group which have been developed around fundamental social necessities. This may enhance and strengthen the community's life, which leads to a sense of attachment to the community and its values.
There is no simple definition of the concept of religion that fully articulates all its dimensions. Religion gave a way to speak with these gods through ritual and prayers, and this practice helps to bind social groups, maintain boundaries, and provide a profound sense of collective identity when they were shared by members of a society. Religion also seemed to be a necessary part of human existence, as important to life as the ability to use language. Some other features says that religion are the mythology or story that surrounds them. This term might be basic oral tradition of stories or a more complex set of texts, but usually includes the creation myth as well as a history of the god, saints, or prophet, and analogies that illustrate and strengthen the religion principle. Thus, to properly identify religion is that religion is a real, identifiable, and long-lasting aspect of human life, and its nature may be characterized in precise terms. And why do people often perform those practices in their religion is because there are hopes of realizing human pleasure and avoiding bad repercussion, including avoiding misfortune and gaining blessings and deliverance from difficulties. Thank you.
And what is terrorism? Terrorism is a type of premeditated violence that is carried out by individuals or groups with political motives. Usually, they use it to influence an audience. From FBI definition, we could understand that terrorism is the unlawful use of force or violence which is often used against civilians. It is also refers to the terrorist acts that are designed to incite or motivate individuals or groups to commit violence. In addition, terrorism can be understood as a form of rational behavior. And from the psychological factors from scholars studying, terrorism argued that these traits were created by factors outside the control of terrorist groups. They also noted that these traits were not inherited from parents. Besides, terrorism is a tool that can be used to achieve a political goal and cause fear in a certain audience of society.
Terrorism upsets people. It does so on purpose. That is its aim, and it is why, in the early 21st century, it has captured so much of our attention. Also, one conclusion that draws apart from a broad set of people is that people become terrorists as a response of discrimination and lack of education that leads to people accepting extremist views and resulting to violence. For example, on what happened in Pakistan, General Musharraf has proved that he recognized the gravity of dealing with the basic cause of extremism, taking major steps to improve economic and educational potential. The report said at the time, referring to Pakistan's terrorism problem. Studies also find that terrorists are more likely to come from well-educated, middle-class or upper-class background. Another example, which happened in 9 November, exposes how income inequality inspired people to commit acts of violence, despite the fact that inequality does not create terrorism. In other words, terror is defined by a strong fear of serious danger, and on a collective level, it is described by a fear of the atmosphere. Terrorism, on the other hand, is a behavioral action, method, or tactic aimed at creating terror. Terror can be characterized as an extreme emotional response to those crimes in terms of psychology. And as a final observation, there are many academics that are frustrated with the endless debate on how to define terrorism. One of them even said that, "Tell me what you think about terrorism and I will tell you who you are." The goal to come up with an objective that complete definition of terrorism that meets both legal and scientific criteria has proven tricky, resulting in a topic that is far too wide to explore.
My name is Nurinqasrina Bt Lokman. Me and my partner Natasha Abdullah will present about how does terrorism occur. Alright, as we already know, terrorism is any act intended to cause of death or serious injury to civilians or unarmed individuals with their intent to intimidate the community. Basically, the factors that occur to terrorism is not due to religious but also on other factors such as interest or personal weakness, political that are born of the spirit nationalism and economic factors. Terrorism is rooted in the attitude of radicalism and it continues to exist until today because of the success of its primary purpose to subdue and control human psychology. Three main factors which are partly seen are religious, political and economic. First, from a religious factor that is easily scalable and universal perception. Texts in religion and practice from some believers supposedly as a justification to the text to be used as an argument that religion allows for terrorism. As an example, the emergence of terrorists such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS and others have used religious sentiments with the banner of the Shahada and makes it an argument of religious truth. Ironically, they are very concerned about the doctrine of the establishment of Daulah Islamiyah or Islamic State ruled by Muslims and obliged to judge the law of Allah. On the Western scholar side also does not take the religion as a main factor in the occurrence of terrorism because there is no single religion on this earth that invites its followers to cultivate violence in daily life.
Okay, we still at the same chapter discussing about how does terrorism can occur in some country. Political factors are also one of the big reasons of how terrorism can happen. This is because another view contends that political causes such as government repression contribute to terrorism and unstable government at their countries. Besides, undemocratic societies produce weak administrations that wreak havoc on the people. Human rights violations will also come into this factor because they are direct outcome of government action and hence will be deemed repression. Some studies have explained that terrorism is strongly linked to government-sanctioned social inequality rather than poverty. So, when the government fails to provide the basic level such as hospitals, medical treatment, employment, and education, it can cause citizens grow dissatisfied, which allows terrorist organizations to recruit. This is because citizens believe that it's government responsibilities to look after their welfare in their country. So, overview of the political factors can be summarized that citizens are more prone to have grievances with people in power when a country shows a low regard for human rights. Citizens may resort to terrorism in order to correct the government's wrongdoings. Terrorist organizations can donate resources to members of their groups in order to fight political misconduct. Next, economic also of one factor why terrorism can happen. Studies have stated most widely held belief is that poverty is the root of terrorism. When people are deprived of certain resources and opportunities, resentment can grow, leading some to turn to terrorism as a means of expressing their anger. Lastly, terrorism also occurs when economic sanctions are imposed on a country. The country's economic situation declines dramatically, which can lead to terrorism. As a result, people who are already poor or on the verge of becoming so are pushed even further over the edge and forced to make do with even worse options. People who are put in even worse circumstances that they were before must find alternative ways to support themselves, which is where terrorist organizations truly thrive in their recruiting.
My name is Shalihah Binti Razak with the matrix number 1191807. Moving on to factors of terrorism related to religion. More than 100 research studies have been undertaken to investigate the elements that lead to terrorist acts. The studies findings differ in parts because it's considered religious, political, and economic element as motivating factor for terrorist activity. However, how does society sometimes point out religion as a major factor? First point, communion and manipulation. The discovery of establishing communion in terms of spiritual union and close association between the human partners with the deity. This discovery and communion in turn leads to manipulation in which the being is seen as ultimately controlling human interest and destiny, hence influence the human partner cause and activity. Thus, this is where religion is defined as interplay between communion and manipulation. Religious communion denotes deep belief and reliance on the spirituality of being or deity as a goal of devotees, while religious manipulation describes the conviction and readiness of devotees or human partners to follow rigorously what is supposed to have been ordered. The influence of religious instruction on its supporter psychology shows that a person is fanatical and turns from a devoted believer to a terrorist. Second point, misconception of jihad. Islam had always been targeted as a terrorism producer. However, no other Islamic terms evoke such as intense reaction as jihad. As jihad is related to Islam, non-Muslim or individual who do not understand the true Islam will believe that Islam is perceived as a threat to human security and well-being. Michael Onfray, the author of Atheist Manifesto, accused Muslims of bloodthirsty and defined jihad as holy war. Jihad does not mean holy war. Jihad can be a struggle or injustice fighting group. Defensive measures are acceptable to protect the community, but aggressive aggression is strictly prohibited. The resembled word for fighting in the Quran had been misinterpreted. Fighting may add up to 164 in the Quran, but non-civilized jihad. This extremism leader and Islamophobes have altered, rewrote, or misinterpreted the Quran following their purpose.
Some researchers make a clear approach to the issue, citing perspective difficulties with religion and terrorism research. Al-Qaeda, a universal religion worldview, was linked with deadly brutality by an Islamist terrorist organization attempting to destroy United States dominance in Islamic countries. First, Assault and Rathmeyer discovered religious belief as well as other factors including power organization and terrorist organizations link made terrorists more deadly. Piazza claimed that strategic religious terrorist organization and abstract or universal religious terrorist organization should be distinguished, although the latter is more brutal. Hand clarified from Piazza's speculation that religious philosophies that are not linked to ignore religious difficulties terrorist organizations to commit more brutal death assaults by framing their terrorist conflict with religions. Additionally, according to Mohammad, it evaluated the effect of Al-Qaeda's religious doctrine known as Salafist jihadism in its transnationalism and contended about endeavors to minimize its significance. Next point, religion's influence on individual feelings and actions. Based on how someone defines religion, religion has had only a beneficial and harmful impact on individual paths. It have considered the significance of religion on a country's social foundation as well as its predisposition for financial successes or failures, since Max Weber's famous The Protestant Ethnic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Marx referred to religion as the people's addiction and acknowledged that its a tempting ability. On the other side, religion has motivated good deeds and served as a social method of control for millions of citizens. Throughout time, there have been several battles waged over personal faith or against other religious views.
When we are talking about religion, what are the key words for it? Yes, it is common to think that religion is something that has to do with worshipping God, gods, spiritual beings that is even greater than reality, or something that we could never ever imagine. Many religions, so far as we have all known, are preoccupied with morality and encourage its followers to do good and righteous things. Let's take the great leaders as an example, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Desmond Tutu, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. These are the selected people who were inspired by their faith to help people who are seriously in need and fight against injustice. That is for the non-Muslim. But what about in the religion of Islam? Who is our icon? And yes, as for Muslim, we believe and acknowledge that the Prophet Muhammad was the best leader of all time, respected by all people, including the non-Muslim. Karl Marx, a German philosopher, emphasized that religion has not always had a positive social effect because, based on history, numerous wars happened due to religious creeds or that they had fought each other because of religious belief. So, not every conflict of terrorism happened due to the religious or theological basis, but it can also be due to the carriers from cultural, ethnic, political, economic, and even ideological aspect.
So Sarah has already clarified that religion does not recognize the act of terrorism because it is indeed the act of injustice and immoral, but unfortunately, the reality today may be contradicted. There are some terrorist activities occurred by the name of religion. For example, incident in 2011. Almost 80 people were killed by a far-right Norwegian with the purpose to kill as many Muslims as possible, which can be defined as the act of Islamophobic. Even the scholars argued about the relationship between religion and terrorism, but most of the scholars stated that terrorism usually happens due to protect one's national territory, political leadership, and socio-economic, but put religion as a plane. So now we can see here that majority of the scholars agree that religion is irrelevant to be related to terrorism, but there are some cases of terrorism even this religion defender cannot deny it have connection to religion itself. That's all from me. Sarah will continue this discussion on the next slide. Thank you.
So what is the connection between religion and also terrorism? What makes them view that religion is the cause of terrorism? Okay, so what makes religious terrorism is particularly cruel and unrelenting is because the offenders have used the religious ideas of divine struggle to serve in the political battle. And as a result, the act of religious terror functions both as tactics in the political strategy and also as an evocation of much larger spiritual conflict. So back to the question. So did religion have any connection with terrorism? The answer is no. It is not necessarily proof that religion's maladaptive character reflects on its situation. In this case, in the situation of terrorism. But as a matter of fact, it represents religion's value as a source of meaning and how it belongs to a huge number of people who believe in it. So I hope you are clear with the explanation in regard to religion and also terrorism by us. Let's continue the discussion from the other team members. That is all from me and also Nurin. Thank you for listening.
Next, our subtopic is ways to prevent religious terrorism. President Joko Widodo stated that terrorism is a violation of human rights which has nothing to do through any faith. Regardless of the reasons, all religions educate us to disagree with any violence, even if it's anywhere. Therefore, we need to work together to eradicate this terrorism so that we can all live in peaceful and tranquility without any conflict that will occur on this world. However, employing this as a tool against certain persons or cultures changes their moral value. First of all, according to Tun Dr. Mahathir, the first move in eliminating terrorism in the world is to get the approval of the United Nations (UN) to stop the violence that exists in every corner of the world. He believed that global agreement on the prosecution of such actions and crimes by terrorists as terrorist attacks is necessary. The international community will work together to take part in whichever action is taken against the attackers. When the UN makes a decision, the entire world must work together to defeat the attackers in question. It's obvious that the only way to fight terrorism is to win people's hearts and minds, both those who sympathize with the cause and for those who support the terrorists. Secondly, to recognize the terrorist identification. That's because we can recognize them by the method in which they act, understand the true reason of how and why violence occurs, and determine the effect on an individual, the general public, and global defense if the violence extends within a community. Therefore, Tun clarified, if we really want the whole country, nevertheless of skin color or religious belief, to fight terrorism, we must first ensure that we recognize the true meaning of terrorism. On Hashim Makaruddin's views, terrorism has nothing to do with faith. Furthermore, religious categorization may lead to false claims or assumptions against Islam, resulting in hate and violence. Undoubtedly, Islam is a harmony faith that seeks to live in harmony with other faiths. If anyone genuinely believed in their faith, they would not hurt each other.
Next, the way to prevent the terrorism is defending and protecting the target of attack, such as unarmed civilians, children, elderly, and women. Although it is quite impossible for security forces to protect all of these people all the time, at least thwart terrorism intent and minimize the impact such as death, detention, and trauma. Captivating the public can lead to a state of phobias and fears among the society. In Islam also prohibits all forms of behavior that could cause fear among the people. Therefore, a peaceful and tolerant understanding of religion should be emphasized as early as teens so that youth are not easily trapped by the teachings of radicalism and terrorism. Islamic authorities or any other religion agencies become the main missionary in addressing this issue by arguing using the right way. With superficial religious knowledge, there are manipulated with doctrine and ideologies clinging to one teaching until it leads to acts of violence. This teaching needs to be prevented before it becomes more contagious by applying the values of security from an early age so that harmony can be fostered.
So now that we are at the end of our discussion, we need a conclusion. Now we take a look back at our main objective, which is to investigate the relationship between religion and terrorism. Based on our observation, it is irrational to relate these two words together, literally or comprehensively. So first, we take a look at the literary meaning of religion. Religion is a part of human equation, which leading people to do good and abstain misbehavior, while terrorism is the misbehavior itself because it is illegal and has to be opposed by humanity, which already contradicts the definition of religion and its nature. So now we are going to talk about the comprehensive part, which is the practical part. So there are some events that related to religion. However, these cases are caused by the lack of knowledge or selfishness that give rise to extremism or manipulation. Also can be caused by political significance to protect one's territory but end up derived by egoism. So to summarize here, religion not always the main issue when it comes to terrorism, but it end up being blamed with to pull out of the crisis. Even though there are no significant evidence on denying the link of terrorism to religion based on what has occurred in the history, but it is clear that terrorism is an enemy to humanity and seek the protection of religion and humanity itself. So that's all from us. Thank you for watching.